Copyright is a term that's used an awfully large amount by a lot of people who don't know what it actually means. There's a lot of people online that will say stuff like, oh, you should copyright that, or, oh, that's a mint idea, copyright it. That's not how copyright works, and I'm here to tell you how copyright does work so you don't fall into that situation where you get it wrong. Copyright is basically just you being able to prove that you created something. A little bit more complicated than that, but in essence, it's if you own copyright of something, that means that you own it. You can prove that it is yours, you can prove that you created it, and therefore you hold the copyright to it. You don't necessarily hold the copyright to something just by creating it. Not because you don't own the copyright, just because you don't have the proof of copyright. That's the important thing. Legally, if you get pulled into court, you have to have proof that you created it, or at least proof that you owned it before the other person that's claiming that they had copyright over it. When me and Joe were at college, we got taught about copyright and we had this kind of thing told to us. And the example that college gave was, I don't know how the mail system works in America. I don't know how your posting system works, but in the UK we have one big company run by like the government that posts everything. We have a thing called recorded delivery, and what that is you take a letter or whatever to them and they will do an official document that says the date that was taken to them. If that letter happens to have a CD in it or a music video on a memory stick or something like that, you could keep that in a safe box or whatever, and if someone comes up to you and goes, you don't own copyright of that song, I do, I wrote it, if they then take you to court, you can go to court and go, I have a recorded delivery mail with the songs in, and here you go, Mr. Judge, it's yours, that's my proof that I owned it at this date. There's a very high chance that if you did that, the other person doesn't have a recorded version of that before your recorded delivery thing. I get this is a little bit complicated. So basically, if you can prove that you owned it before they owned it, that proves that you created it, or at least you're more likely to have created it than them. A way easier way of doing that in the modern day is not by just making it on your computer. Yes, there is a date stamp on a computer. If you create something, it'll say date created. But if you put your system back to 1979 and create something, it will say it was created in 1979. Judges know that, and it will therefore not be a legally binding thing. What you can, however, do is do an email, because all emails, or at least Google emails, if you really want to be safe, they are ran through an actual time-zoned network of time. They are up to date, and if you date stamp an email, it will 100% be the correct time and date, therefore it will hold up in court, I believe. So it's a little bit complicated, but basically all that copyright is you being able to prove that you created something. If you can prove that you created it, you have copyright over it. You have copyright over it anyway if you created it, it's just you need the proof to actually legally be able to prove that. Now when people say, oh, you should copyright that, really what they mean is trademark, which is a whole other thing, but it's very similar. It's just being able to keep your intellectual property being a thing that you make that other people could make that's not necessarily physical, so like a phrase or a song or a metaphor, something like that is intellectual property. Technically you can't copyright intellectual property because you can't just copyright a word, because you can't say I said that word before you. So the thing that was made up to combat that was a thing called trademarking, which means that you can trade under that name. So Star Wars, for example, is trademarked. You'll see the Star Wars logo and then a little TM. That means it's trademarked, and they can trade under that name. I can't, because currently Disney owns that trademark. So if you just happen to want to get something trademarked, like a name or anything like that, I wouldn't recommend it if you're in a band. Like, you don't need to be trademarking song names. Definitely don't do that, because if you're going to take a band to court because they called a song the same as what you called a song, then you are a bad band. Your morals are not right, and just don't get into it. There's no need to get into it. If someone else is doing a song that's the same name as yours, that's not a problem. They aren't stealing your audience, it's fine. If you want to apply to get trademarking, I don't know how to do it. A quick Google would help you find out how to do it. I just wanted to tell you the difference between copyrighting something and trademarking it. Copyrighting is you being able to prove that you made something. Trademarking is you trading under a name or phrase or motto. You know, like Nike, just do it is trademarked. No one else can trade under that motto. That's what trademarking is. That's what copywriting is. I hope this helps. So when someone online now says, you should copyright that, you can already go, I've already got it. Provided that you can prove it legally. Thank you for watching. I get this topic is a little bit boring, and there's going to be a few things in the industry series that are a little bit boring, but I feel as though you should know them, and I don't want to restrict your knowledge just by us talking about interesting things. So that was what copyright was. Yes, it was boring, but I bet you're glad you now know that.
Very good.
Bye.
Very sweet.
I'm sweet. I'm angelic. Right, that wasn't focused.